because umsebenzi esiwenzayo u-impact impilo zabantu forever. Ma ungenzanga kahle into yomuntu, umuntu for the rest of their lives and their families, they'll be impacted, uyabona? And kunzima ubuyele emuva usiyolungisa ngoba into eziningi ezizenzayo sihlelela ngale kwethuna ukuthi uma ungasekho kwelabaphilayo kwenzakalani ngento zakho. So if isingahlelanga kahle manje kuba nenkinga enkulu ngale, yabona? Imindeni isele yodwa, imindeni ayisazi, imindeni isisele nenkinga. Okay. Manje ke the post had said is it legally correct? Did I say something like that? But we're just doing that to be catchy. But I'm going to try and make it a bit of fun for everyone. But this is important. It is important is bora. So bora now. Now the presentation at some point you'll feel it's boring, but it's important. The moment you lala, that's where you have a problem. So let your will be done. It's just a topic just to encompass everything that I will just be speaking under. I'm going to do a really fast run through between marriage, death, and the likes in between. Next year futhi. So ngizozama ukufaka zonke ke. Ngicela ke sithathe ke amaBhayibheli wethu Proverbs 13:22. The only part I'm looking for ile part nje ethi a good man leaves an inheritance to what? To his children's children. Uzwile indaba? Awushiyeli abantwana bakho kuphela ngithi ushiyela nani? Nezizukulwane sakho. Asikwazi ke ukukhuluma ngamawili singakhulumanga ngemishado. Angazi the man understand yini? Asikwazi okay khona notebook isheshisa hamba landa but asikwazi ukukhuluma ngewili singakhulumanga ngomshado because indlela oshade ngayo will impact indlela owenza ngayo iwili yakho. Angazi understandana nibazalana. So uhlobo lomshado okuwo, that marriage will determine ukuthi when you are doing your will uyenza kanjani into zakho. Who are you giving what and how and why? It is all going to be based on the type of marriage that you have. No ungashadi kwakho ke, uyabona? Mongashadanga kuhlukile akufani, uyabona? So into ezibalekile lezo. Siyasheshisa kancane ngoba thiwe sizobuye sibuye. So imibuzo mawunayo you can just write them down and then siyabuya ke. Na indaba. Yashada manje. Wonke umuntu athanda umshado ngithi. Ngangibali kodwa. Ngithi wonke umuntu athanda umshado ngithi. It's a jolly event. It's a beautiful day. Wonke umuntu ugqoke kahle, wonke umuntu uswenkile kuyalilizelwa ngithi. Masuphelile ke umshado emva kalokho. The wedding day. Sekuqala ini ke manje? I-marriage. I-marriage ukuze ibe right. Ziningi izinto ezenza ukuthi umshado ube right. Angeke ngikhulume kakhulu ngomshado ngoba ngishadanga yabo. But ngoba ngiyabadivorceisa abantu ngiyayazi imshado ukuthi iba nenkinga kuphi imshado yabona? Imshado abantu abaningi le light it's just too much, I don't know. Imshado abantu abaningi masishada ezabantu ngizosho kanjalo ngisifaka khona izoba personal ngizoyi understand na. Masishada ubheka ukuthi umyeni wami uright ungiphatha kahle akunankinga ngithi uyamthanda uNkulunkulu singena enkonzweni eyi1 isudu ifaka kahle uyinile uright lo muntu. Naye mayibheka lo ntombazana uright naye uyasebenzela kahlupha abantu intombazana iright. People then get married ne. Kakhulu people get married because they love each other ngithi. Experience has shown ukuthi marriage has nothing to do with love, but love is important parts of marriage, but there are other things to marriage than just love. Yabona? So this is what happens game. Abantu by the time they decide ukushada khona into abasabayo ukuzikhuluma. Ukuthi mangisho kanje because siyakholwa singamasabatha kuzothiwa ngikholwa awura ngimthanda umnyeni wami yabona? uNkulunkulu akafuni lokho. Imishado ihlukene kanje, khona customary marriage, khona uHindu, ukhona iminingi imishado, but engifocus kona namhlanje. Yilo, excuse me, esiwenza kakhulu la enkonzweni o governishwa i-Marriage Act of South Africa 88 of 1990 on 1986 ne. Iwona lo sidila ngawo namhlanje kakhulu. Kulo mshado lo okwazi ukushada khona in community of property, ushade out of community of property, bezoshada out of community of property with accrual ne. In community of property La mangabuzo gogo almost bonke bashade in community of property. Ngingangipha ama-R100 nonke. Almost wonke umuntu oshadile ushade kuphi? In community. Siyenzani ka in community of property? Okwakho okwabani? Okwami okwabani? Iqala nini leyo nto leyo ka in community masicabanga? Ngelanga lomshado phambi kwamfundisi wathi nje I do. Awukwazi ukubuyela ekhaya uyokhipha i-asset ethile unikeze ubhuti wakho. Uzoboshwa. You can't do that. The day uma phambi komfundisi na umfundisi authorized by Minister of Home Affairs conduct imshado. The day wathi I do. That marriage is now a marriage in community of property. Whatever assets you have, be shares, cars, homes, now there's somebody else who owns that. Own a 50% share. As much as you are the owner, they are as well. You can't dispose nor alienate that property without the written consent of your spouse. A lot of people, abayeni babo noma amakhosikazi abo, bangene ekoloteni bengathathanga i-written consent from ama spouse. Next thing umama uyafika ekhaya khona iletter ithi la ekhaya sikorota i-204,000. Athi mama no, it can't be us. Yabona? Because la ekhaya sinaso leso sikweletu. Bese bethi hayi nanga umnyeni wakho usayinile. Bese uthi umama mina ngisayine nini? Bese kuba ne document ene signature ka mama, but umama akakhumbula ukuthi wayisayinela isikoloto noma wayisayinela ini. You have a recourse against your spouse mayikwenza njalo because that is financial abuse and that is a crime, fraud. Ngithi yabona umuntu athi signa ama documents nje lawa wokuthi mangishona imali uzoyithola kanti umuntu uthatha isikweletu ngawe. A lot of people emshadweni abaningi bathatha Sophia kuma examples but ngizoyenza as we go along. Yabona indlu abantu banayo ngithi bane bond. Then they take a second bond on the home. Ngithi masithatha second bond aforge ama signature wa spouse wakho omunye. Umama uhlele ekhaya wazi ukuthi kwakhe ngithi one day kufika incwadi evela eAbsa na Standard Bank bethi no le ndlu lena iyakolota ikolota 1 million. Athi mama no, it can't be. Thina sibhatalile nge93 sisiqedile lesikoloto. Why don't worry ke umnyeni wakho ngo2006 ufikile wathatha a new bond and manje akasakhona ukubhadala. Mayem divorce umnyeni wakhe nizothi umshado umhlulile akakholwa ngithi. But it wrong leyo nto ngithi. Either way noma semdivorce sekulate sekuyisikoloto sabo bobe njani beyi2 because of in marriage in community of property. But it's not also bad indaba in community of property because umshado ukubambisana ngithi. Abantu ababili ngithi abahlangene ngothando ngithi. Cha musayini umshado on community of property unobuhle bawo obukhulu nabo. Ngoba when you guys now want to enter into financial agreements, I'm not going to go a lot into that. My colleague is going to go into depth with that. But when you want to go into financial agreements in terms of loans and whatnot, it's better sometimes money two than monjani uyi-one. Isikose bangcono, yabona. Lo munye uzokwazi kuba mhlambe ishority for lo munye, yabona. But angifuni ukungena kakhulu kuzona because into zaka finance. But kuba ngcono sometimes masibabili. And isiza ngani sometimes in community of property ayikho into ezowenzeka la ekhaya ibe surprise. We all know angithi ayikho imali yomuntu oyi1 yonke imali la ekhaya senze njani siyayishare yonke into la ekhaya sinjani siyayishare. Mara ungakhohlwa ukuthi nayo noma iyinhle inayo ama cautions ofana wathathe nayo. Out of community of property okwakho okwami okwami. This is the misconception that a lot of individuals have when it comes to this marriage. Basitshela ukuthi ma we out of community of property, umuntu uyazidlisa, umuntu uyazigqokisa. A duty of maintenance in marriage does not fall away just because we are married out of community of property. Umthetho is careful with that ukuthi even if you are married out of community of property, you still have a duty to maintain each other. Angeke ukuthi ngoba sike out of community of property awusathenga ukudla la ekhaya umuntu nomuntu akazidlele. No, there is still a common law duty of maintenance between our spouses. Number 2, just because you're out of community of property akusho ukuthi manje wena usuzohlala eflatini lakho wedwa and I stay in my own flat manje because thina phela we are out thina. No, there is still a common law duty of providing a family home for both parties. Okusho ukuthini? Noma ngabe okwakho kungokwakho, nokwami kungokwami, usayi-responsibility yakho, usayi-responsibility yami at the end of the day. But umehluko ukuthini ka-Act of Community of Property, uma phakathi kwami nawe kukhona onesikweletu, akekho ozothinteka nganxa yaleso sikweletu. Ngizokunika example. There's a couple that got married with the husband with a lot of assets and whatnot. Unkosikazi didn't have so many assets at the time, bashada. Along the years, the husband was defaulter in some payments of these homes of our own. But they're out of community. The banks come for what they have. Mabe figure, lo muzo la ikhaya bahlala kuwo okalo mama la ikhaya. I-microwave, because some creditors when they come, ne-microwave yahamba, nomshini uyahamba, nosofa uyahamba. Uzosala umile ngenyawo. So mabe figure, mabethi washing machine, hayi unomnikazi washing machine. Istove la ikhaya sinomnikazi, yabona? Yonke into la ikhaya enjani? Nomnikazi. That is only how their home was saved. Because their marriage was out of what? Of community of property. Kube bekundawonye umshado wabo, babezosala nabantwana bemile phandle. Abana moto, abana impahla. Angithi yabona? Abana lutho because of indlela abashade kanjani ngayo. Bese khona into ekuthiwa ke it's out of community of property with i-accrual. Umuntu nomuntu kunoma yini onayo iyagaina something lento nayo. Asithi une-1,000 namhlanje ngithi I think the presenter in the morning, she spoke about accrual a bit. Sizwile ukuthi there's growth that happens with an individual. So asithi ngingena emshadweni ngine 50,000. As umshado wami ukhula, by the time uphela due to death or divorce, umshado wami sengine 100,000. Shuthi growth yomshado engiyitholile ngikulo mshado ibimalini i-50,000 angithi. Then what happens is that mina umshado wami okhule kakhulu kunomunye ngizoshare half of my growth with lo umshado wakhe okhule kanjani kancane. Abantu abafana ngithi abanye abantu they give their all to marriage to a point that ama dreams and ama aspirations abo they forget about them because they are focusing on this what, on this marriage. Ngithi ukuthi labantwana bakhule, ukuthi lekhaya libe homely, kuhlezi kunokudla, kwenziwe yonke into la ekhaya, khona ofana lahlekele okuthile. If nobody is losing anything in a marriage, angeke ulast lo mshado. Khona ofana sacrifice either the husband or the wife. But the sacrifice is a big part of a marriage. And abantu abaningi these days our marriage awasebenzi because nobody wants to sacrifice themselves. Sonke sinama dreams and aspirations, yabona. Nami ngiyangibona nginama dreams and aspirations. Mangashada ngabe ngidlala ngomnyeni wami ngithi because I still have a lot to do, I feel, angithi yabona. But manje mase nginomunye umuntu, khona into efanele ngiyiphoze kancane so that what we have started can grow. Angithi yabona lento leyo. Ngicela ifeni shem kashisa. Kashisa. Ngicela ifeni kashisa. Okay, sichazile le, ngiyashesha manje ngithi ubonile. Sichazile. Sijahe ukuya kumawila ngithi. Imshado sizwile ngithi. Umuntu uzozikhethela umshado right for yena ngithi. Okay, kulaba sebeshadile already and they feel, but what about us, because we are already married in community of property, maybe we might want to change our marriage regime. You can apply to court, you make an application to court to change your marriage regime as long as you can prove to the court ukuthi lento yenzayo awurobhi ama creditors akho, uyabona? Ukuthi abantu mabesafuna ikoro, thank you so much. Ukuthi abantu mabefuna imali yabo, they can still get imali yabo or abeka abantu abakweletayo, yabona? As long as you can prove ukuthi no financially akekho umuntu osonjani esimrobhayo. Now sesifika kumawila ngithi incane so askisini ne when that lady gets here sizozama ukulokhuza. But iwili, what is the will? Ngokucabanga kwethu. Umkhulu aphendula lapha ya. Mina ngihamba ngeorder, umkhulu uphakamisa. Yes mkhulu. Yebo. Ngicela simlalela kancane umkhulu. Uthi umkhulu iwill isifiso sakhe sokuthi uma esehambile emhlabeni kungabibikho ukuqwebhana ekhaya. Okay. Umkhulu uthi ngiyasummarize umkhulu utheni une. Uthi umkhulu iwill isifiso sakhe sokuthi ifa lakhe licazwe kanjani. Ngithi yabona? Ngiyaxolisa ngizosebenzisa isiZulu kakhulu ngoba i-target market yami abantu abadala ngithi. Sizasikhuluma isiNgisi ngelinye ilanga. Ngokwamanje sizokhuluma nje isiZulu ngoba abantu abadala ngifisa behambe bezwile yabona. So uthi umkhulu iwill isifiso sakhe ukuthi kuzowenzekani nezinto zakhe uma esehambile. Kodwa umkhulu uthi yena ngoba yena ushadile kakhulu yena uzopha. Uthi yena umkhulu yena kakhulu uzopha umama ekhaya. Angeke aphumele ngaphandle ayopha abanye. Umkhulu uyanqaba lokho yabona. Uthi yena umuntu azomupha kakhulu bani? Umkakhe ngoba yena ushadile la endlini ngithi. Yena ufuna ukunikeza umkakhe esekhaya. Okay, umkhulu uqinisile into ayishoyo. Iwill isifiso sakho esishoyo ukuthi ufisa ukuthi uma ungasekho emhlabeni kwenzekaleni ngama-assets wakho. Umuntu nomuntu ophilayo unayo into ethile angayishiyela omunye. Ngiyacela siphinde leyo. We all have something to give to others. Even if you feel i-bank account yakho iku-minus njengamanje, you have things that you can bequest to other people, that you can give to other people mawusungasekho. You may not know it, but mawungashona khona abantu abangabanga impahla zakho nje zokugqoka. You may not know it angithi. Abanye nje babange ama-plate akho nezitsha zakho. Umama uthi u-AMC amabhodo wakho. Khona no-Tupperware athi ugogo ushiyele mina lezi zinto ngoba bengimphekela mina every weekend ugogo. So imini efana athole. Imndeni ixabane forever ngenxa yesitsha. Imndeni ixabane forever ngenxa into yokugqoka. Kanti into lena obungayisho uphila ukuthi fane iye kuphi. You have time now. Now, decide who will inherit in my estate. Now. Ngiyangizwa bazalana ngithi isikhathi unaso nini manje. Khetha ukuthi ubani ozothola onjani okuthile ey'ntweni zanjani zami. Okay. Into kanjalo. So now iwill into oyibhala phansi bazalwana. Uyabhala phansi usho ukuthi mina sibanibani, mina Mabongilanga, ID number yami, lena yi-last will and testament yami. Urevoke wonke amanye amawili wakwaba nawo ngoba wazi mhlawumbe kwayibhala iwill wena uyitshela kuyadlalwa kanti ku-serious ngosushona kanti sekunenkinga yabona. So you will need to revoke all your other wills, right? Bese kuthi ke hene iwill yakho ukuze ingadali kakhulu uxabana, siye si-advise ukuthi awuthole professional ikusize uma uyibhala. Ebhenki benza into enhle, ebhenki bakubhalela iwill ne? Uma une-account nabo, nabameli bakubhalela iwill. Manje nama-accountants amanye ayibhala iwill ne? Ukuthi kuzowenzakalani ngemali yakho. Ku-right lokho, but mina ngithi ngingatheni ngizopromote into eyenziwa yithina ngithi thina si-advise ukuthi get an attorney to write your will, then get the bank to safekeep your will. Niyabona umehluko bazalwane? Get an attorney to do what? To write your one, your will. Bese bank bekwenzelani iwill yakho? Bakugcinele yona. Yindaba ngisho kanje. Ebank lo muntu okwenzela iwill akasiyona i-attorney. Lo muntu uyibanker, angithi yabona? Bawanika i-format, i-system yabona? Ubanika igama lakho? itemplate agcwalise usibani bani sibongo sakho agcwalise uhlala kuphi ayabona afaka kuphele kanjalo thina masikubhalela wathi hayi nginomuzi what Orlando East sizi okay sibe sicheck ukuthi lento othi unayo ngempela yini, because a lot of people think they own certain immovable properties when they don't, especially izindlu. Ngithi abantu abaningi wazi ukuthi hayi lendlu ngoba ibill municipal bill ibiza mina nase deeds office lendlu ibiza mina, which might not be the truth. You might just be a guardian of the home, you are not the owner. Yeah, so a lot of times people will be requesting things they don't own. And the bank, they are good people now, but it's a good institution. But obviously bank, they will try and nominate themselves to be one of my executors and whatnot. Later stage, they do come back to us and ask us to send my estates. That way, best estate yako, it has longer to wind up. So if you wind up with estate, but what we advise is that get an attorney to write the will for you. And it bese uthola e bank bakubekele ini iwill yakho. Kunceda ngani lokho? The day ushona bese submit i-death certificate yakho ekhaya kini ebank. Ibank izosho lithi usibani bani bene will nayi. Iyasheshisa ngithi yabona lento le. So a centrality of issues and documents, you know, all your documents are safely kept at a certain place. Tina FNB pay yes, but 559 to keep our documents esibona ngathi are safe a year. Ngithi nayizo it's in a year, not a month. Ngithi pay just to keep our documents safe. We don't advise keeping a will at home. Why? Besides ukusha, besides ukutshontsha, the reason is this. Khona ozogibela lapha pheka wardrobe or aphakamisa umantrasi avulele will le abona ukuthi akatholi yena mase cleaner lo tholayo ukuze yena ezothola yena ungayibeke ekhaya. But ungayibeka if you have a safe home, you know, nabantu abangathandi indaba zabanye abantu yabona. But umeklenekenyana uba khona nanokuthi ke icreate enmity engekho necessary between siblings and children. Why ufuna uxamanisa abantwana bakho? Treat your children equally. Angithi yabona, even if you are not treating them mama siyaza we are coming. Even if it's not about treating them equally, even if ubona ukuthi lo mongamshiyela something akahlakaniphanga izophela within a year. But don't let people know usaphila ukuthi kuzowenzakalana. Death is a beautiful thing. It's sad ukufa because siyakhala sina ngithi sele. But death is beautiful, you know why? Wena nje uhambile shem bazozibona basele. Bazozibona ngempela ukuthi baphuma kanjani. Awuzwa next babelishela kanjalo ngithi lithi la uyakhona ngithi you don't know anything ngithi awuna lutho. Even if people cry day and night, umkhethile ashosho, sorry. There's nothing we can do. But ubuhle bayo ukuthini, we know ukuthi this was your choice. The reason for it we might never know, but it was your what? Your choice. So kubalekile ukuthi siyenze ini amawili. Njengoba ngibhekile uba iwili yakho hle. Ibalekile. So what are the legal requirements for a valid will? In writing, it must be signed, it must be witnessed, and you must have capacity. Bese ungafaka ama illegal clause kwi-will yakho. Yeah, ngizonichazela something here. Back in the day, abazali bebezoyenza ama-will bethi, I leave my entire estate to my daughter Mabongi on condition that she marries before the age of 25. Is that legal? Why is that illegal? Why is that illegal? What if I never get married? I can't marry myself. That's something that I cannot control. Hey, you can't leave a condition in a will where man because I'm not going to inherit. Now I'm getting married just because I want to what? To inherit. Isn't that sad? It's wrong. You are deciding for me. It's my body. It's my life. I have a choice. I'm an autonomous being. I need to make my own choices. Don't choose for me. But you can say, I am bequesting my entire estate to my daughter Uma Bongi on condition that she gets her PhD. That's something I can do. No, I can attain a PhD. If you give yourself time and effort and dedication, you can get a PhD. Mara phela umzali wakho uyakubona ngeke abhale into wabona la ukuthi ngeke ufike shame. Uyabona ukuthi ama chances of you getting there akhona, ngisho yabona. But maybe umzali uyenzela leyo nto to help you with your dreams. Maybe it is your dream to get a PhD, very good master's level. You have registered already, but you'll only inherit once. Why get the PhD? It's not that bad. Thola ma witness ayi-2 azosayina ukuthi i-signature yakho le. And ma uyisayina le will uyisayina phambi kwawo ama-witness. You can't say to me, Miss Langa, ngicela ungenzele will. Ngizohamba nayo lapha ekhaya, bazofika lapha ekhaya basayina abanye ungakhathazeki. No. People must sign in your presence. You understand? To authenticate your signature. We need to know it was you who signed. And ma sign, you had the capacity, you are above the age of what? Of 16. Umuntu ona 16 uyakwazi ukwenza ini? I-will. Number 2, abakufosanga. A lot of abogogo nabomkhulu baku situation where abantwana bayabaforce because useyamnakekela ekhaya, yabona? Angeke azamgeze mayingayisayinanga le document. Angeke azamphakela ukudla because akasayinanga. Ngisho yabona into le. So having ama witness ayi-2 kunceda lapho ukuthi ugogo nomkhulu bayenze lento lena ngokuthanda kwabo. Free will, angisho yabona. Ungaphi unongubani noma yini, inominini. Siyadlula. Mental capacity, sometimes njengoba ngisho ukuthi abanye sebebadala akasekho right, useyasaba unefear ukuthi ayikho umuntu ozomnakekela, useyabhala nje ukuze abantwana bengamshiyi bahlale eduze kwakhe ngaso sonke isikhathi, yabona? Right. Siyadlula fast. So why is i-will so important? Incane lento skis next time ngizonenzela bangcono ne. So why is it important? So it helps to clear out any confusions that may be present. Angithi khona mina ngazi kuyimini favorite child kama mama ngithi. Nosisi wami uzazi favorite child. Nobhuti wami uzazi favorite child. Kanti makhona i-will, we all know uba unothola ini angithi. Akekho ozozibuza ukuthi fanele kwenzekeni. Number 2, it gives clear direction with regards to our assets. So now we know ukuthi le ndlu sizoyenzani, le moto sizoyenzani, le phone sizoyenzani, ne laptop. Zonke lezi zinto njalo siyakwazi ukusifaka ngithi. Ama TV, ama household contents and whatnot. We can always state what do we want to happen to these things, ne? And then it helps with the process of winding up an estate, ne? A master's office, but the estate must be winded up within 6 months. In reality, it can go up to 2 years. Estate. Why? Sometimes you feel 2 years because asazi senze njani ngani. Number 2, asazi unani. I'm going to pause for a moment at this point. We don't know what you have. Mamtana, we don't know. Ubaba wakho lapha ekhaya wazi lezi imoto lezo zivezile. Ngalo muzi nihlala kuwe nale flat enilithengile linye. When unemali wena, we invest still overseas when. Your husband doesn't know. And you really die. And nobody knows. Imali yakho ihlale, ithole interest, government ayisebenzise, kwenzekeni. But nobody knows, angithi. Abantwana bahlupheke when you had left a chunk of money for them ukuthi babe right, but awutshelanga muntu. There is no central database where we can type you. Sithole yonke information ngama investment wakho. Siyakwazi ukuthola igoloto zakho. Umuntu nomuntu la unganika ID number yakho ngakubuyela nendaba zakho. Ukuthi 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 7 7 8 10 10 10. But I don't know investe kuphi. Angithi yabona? Angazi ufihle kuphi. Maybe emva kwendlu ukubhile wafaka igolide, we don't know. So i-will inceda ngani? Siyazi ukuthi unani. We know. It helps ini ikuphi ibanjwe ubani. Angithi yabona? And naye imnika direction that person who's holding that asset on your behalf. Ukuthi how should they release the asset? Should they give it in equal share to your children? Should they give it to your siblings? Bayinika bani? Angithi yabona lento le. Sesi right, angithi I understand the importance of will manje. Wonke umuntu uzoba ne-will la angithi. Ukhona osakazwanga ngifuna sidlule, ngifuna siye kwezinye izinto. What happens if you die without leaving a valid will? Angithi siyasibona nesithomba, angithi yabona? Abantwana abanjani? Bayabanga manje. unopopi nje because asazi ukuthi ufuna uye kubani angithi yabona. So ama consequences of you not living a valid will ukuthi abantu abashiyayo ekhaya bazohlala benganakho ukuthula ngenxa zakho. And you could have prevented it angithi. Okay, ngifuna sizowind up i-estate fast because yona into enye balekile isikhathi sami sesiphelile I think yeah sesiphelile. Must wind up ama-estate sesiphelile. Okay, asithi namhlanje kashonwa ngithi siyawulungiselela umncwaba ngithi siyaqeda siyangcwaba sesiqedile ngithi then what sesilwela izinto sesifuna lezi zinto lezayisele senifuna le mali nizoyithola kanjani imali esebank? What's the process? What's the procedure? Come on, a session. We are claimer. Uclaima ngani? Get the certificate. Nenye. We have 17 to find out. Angengikukhombe. You are my learned friend. She's an attorney. She knows what happens. I'm not gonna do a point her. What I want to know because so this is what ukusizana. Sexual niwe manje. Nangu umuntu asithi namhlanje. Ngithi senibonile lapha ngusana ukopela. Angithi ngiyambona April umngane nami ubheke lapha usharp kabi ngiyamazi. Ubheke lapha. So umuntu mayishona senza what we call either a letter of authority or a letter of executorship. Sithatha le letter le. Master's office angithi uba nothola le letter le. Oyile master's office. Yazini, I think umngane nami April udinga imic. Waza April. Ngifuna nizwe lento le because ngifuna silungise fast.
Was letter? Oyile.
Okay.
Waba neproof ukuthi uhlobane kanjani nalomuntu oshonile. Then uyothola iletter.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Ngirayi.
Ofika kuqala. Siyagijima umcintiswano lo. It's a race. Who got there first? Mamiki has a hand up. Yes, Mamiki. Oi, executor. Okay. I like the answer April and your Mamik is perfect, you understand? That's 100%, it's a 10 out of 10. But I love April's answer because it's truly our mentality as black people. Ngathola ID, ngathola death certificate. Yimi into zami lezi. Angithi ngiphase lezi zinto lezi. Yimi. And then ngampela siyagijima siye master's office angithi. And it's true. People get there, they get to the master's office. Oh, master asks you a first question. Ati, uhlobane kanjani no movie? Umamncane, okay, let's take the umamncane. Umamncane wami. Okay, manje umamncane wakho bengashadanga. Hayi unayo husband mara ungamnaki nakamina. Yimina bese death certificate ne-ID copy. Angithi ayihambi kanjalo wazalwane. Ayihambi kanjalo. When you go to the master's office, be sure ukuthi you have locus standi, meaning you have the right to be there. Asiphumeni kuma estate wabantu ne? Asiphumeni kuma family affairs wabantu. Asiphumeni endaweni zabantu. Ifamily ayisakhona ukwind up ama assets cause wena gogo mncane ula. Izinto zikasisi lezi. Usisi. Asiphiki udadweni, it's the truth. Mara allow the children, allow the spouse to work it out. As pig, it's the truth. Angithi usisi wakho nizalo mama oyi1 baba umntana kini umntana kini, but ngelinye ilanga wa decide ukuba nomntwana naye, wa decide ukuba nomnyeni naye. So those people are the family. But what happens if umuntu uyashona para akazange ashade akakaza nabantwana? Funa ngenzeka okay usisi Amanda uthe ngenze ngaye example akamind Nangu sisamanda ke uyashona nayi Audi yakhe siyayazi ngiyamazi nani apartment right ngcono ngizoyenza ngaye kahle example nangu uyashona ke nangu cousin wakhe la iduso wakhe shanti namaphepha umzala wami lo yonke indawo besindawone nayi death certificate iphethwe yimi anangithi ubaqwe uyena ozohlola umncwabo athele le death notice yonke into ngithi afike sefika lapha yana ngempela abe convincing ngithi bese kuyabuza kuthiwa Lucy's Amanda okay akanawo the first question ngizobuza kuthiwa akanawo yini abazali hayi asinayinake indaba abazali bakhe badala akanazi ingane hayi ingane nje akanazo shem akakaze shade lutho hawu kodwa manje abazali bona hayi bakhona kodwa ke bakhethe mina ipi incwadi eshoyo ukuthi bakhethe wena hayi ngingayinaki leyo nto umzala wami lozwanini ngami nayi nendlu yakhe ebond mina owazi ukuthi ukolota nje 2000 kuphela yimo waziyo le moto iqedile yimo wazi investment yakhe ese Stanley yimo wazi zonke into zakhe it doesn't work like that phuma endabeni zabantu doesn't work like that umuntu mayeshonile engashadanga enoma enabazali abazali bakhe abanjani aba-inheritayo siyazi abazalwane uma asikhuluma ngomuntu onganayo iwili lana so uyashona akanabo abazali unabazali sorry siqala ngabazali before sifike kwa-siblings if uyashona uyi-one angisenza ngosamande example she has parents so qala ngabazali bakhe bathola in equal share but let's say abazali bakhe nabo they predeceased her basho baqala kunayo usesele bese kuba weroshonayo sekusele abosisi bakhe so who inherits osisi bakhe sibiza ngokuthi inheritance per stairpiece ngokulandelana kwabo angithi yabona ngokwehla ngeidebhisi yabona siyehla sisuka kuye siyaphansi ubani olandela emva kwakhe ngithi yabona sithola abantwana bakubo uzoshare nabantwana bakubo equally so asikhethi thina ukuthi lona bebengakhulumisana asikhethi thina ID number siyafaka siyadlula asikhulumi lutho thina ngithi akho will kulungile akanabo abazali akanabo abantwana akanawo ama-siblings no it happens angithi akanabo abazali akanabo abantwana akanawo ama-siblings sekuthola bani ke manje hayi ke umzala akamkhumbula umzala umzala ke sengathatha amaphepha ke manje ke agijima nakhona umzala ugijima nje ngoba ugogo nomkhulu abekho angithi uyayibona le nto le makusakhona ugogo nomkhulu sifuna igazi lakhe umuntu ilineage yakhe straight asakafiki kuwena mzala sobuye sibuye kuwe sifuna abantu bakanjani bakubo nayi into embi abantu abayenzayo ngizothi nani bazalwane niyayenza nithi nazi ukuthi umuntu unama siblings ayi3 or 4 ningababala abanye into embi leyo wrong leyo nto leyo nizosenhlukaniselene imiliyoni lomuntu nathola ama-250 nathola ama-250 the day we find out siyayifuna leyo mali and thina siyakubopha ke fraud leyo ngoba omunye anifuna ukumbhala yena wahamba la ekhaya esithukile it doesn't matter akusindaba yenu leyo wonke umuntu okhona mbaleni lena ngiyayibala futhi because sometimes umuntu uyashona especially abo baba ngisazofika kubaba ne abo baba kakhulu you don't know how many children your husband has you don't know nakini nje ukuthi niba ungakhawazi until shona uzowazi ke mase kushoniwe ke will know manje nje ungalibeli ukuthi si3 si4 hours you don't know sizowazi ngomncwabo ukuthi ningakhi ne mase kufika umncwabo uyambona umntana kini ophuma le eMarabastad uyambona ufana nobaba mphela lo uye wala ekhaya lo mara nthule lethu ubaba nje ubengana nix baba ubengana lutho nje akho lutho nje sisele nje asina lutho nje kanti nilinda ahambe yena ngithi mayise hambile niyagijima nemaster nota ngithi bese liyashela lemiliyoni leli ngithola ama-250 by 4 angithi kanti kahle hle ngakhini ne by 5 angithi sizanibopha and ibhlungu because mina ngithi yabona ukuthi ngumntwana abantu abadala nibona niyazibona badala kanjani umuntu esethi hayi misilanga ngiyacela bandla ngizozama ukuyikhokha kancane kancane khathi uyithathanga kancane kancane uyithathe yonke buyisa imali. Be honest when you are dealing with a deceased estate. Please, you know your brother has 5 children, 6 children, 7 children. Let us wait. Mafana senza DNA. Let's wait. Let's do DNA testing. Let's do everything before we share the estate yabantu ngicela ne. Because it's going to be embarrassing one day. Umzalwane bese uyangicela, usuyangifonela uthi yo bongi, angithi uzongifonela kabili as a criminal attorney and as an estate expert. Ngithi uthi yo bongi, yazi manje lana ngephutha. Angithi mase nibeka abazalwane niyazazi. Ngephutha ngathatha imali ngephutha. Manje ngephutha yadleka yonke iphutha kuba ayikenzeke nje intentional. Ngephutha yadleka, ngephutha. Bese manje says embarrassed so because this is embarrassing, you understand? But I have to get over it. Ngasakuthatha njengomzalwane ngithatha njengomuntu nje. Ngithi okay nangomuntu ube isigebengu. Sengimnceda kanjani? Isigebengu ngiyasinceda vele ngisincede ke. Ngisincede. But we have a chance to do right. Bazalwane ngicela ne. We have a chance to do right. Abantwana mabekhona bonke babize bonke. Musa futhi wena ufuna ukuba wena usucontroller. Ziyekele izingane. You can be there to assist. But let people do what they need to do. Umthetho is clear. Akekho zorobha omunye. Umthetho controls. We know how things are supposed to go. We know. Yonke into ine record. Masiye master's office sifaka le ID number. Siyakwazi ukuthola something which we call an LND. Sikwazi ukubona ukuthi kwacollectwe emalini. Sikwazi ukubona ukuthi kwakusharewe emalini. Yabona? So ngiyanicela nenze into right niyazi bazalwana. Kusase nesikhathi ne. And then naye into engifuna ukukhuluma ngayo. Kulabo ababenabazali, even if it is back as 1996 umzali wakho washona but wayesebenzela ugovernment ne mara ukho sure ukuthi washare something or not, just go to the guardian fund even online ufake ID number yakho or call them usho nje igama lakho nesibongo, excuse me, bazokutshela ukuthi if there's money on your name or not. Abantu abaningi banayo imali abazali babo babashiyele kwi-guardian fund ne. And imali yabo has interest eningi. People don't know. Even if umdala usuna 30, una 50, una 60, check a guardian fund ukuthi is there nothing for me there now. Angithi yabona just to check. Angeke ulahlekwe lelutho ngokucheck angithi just to phone nje inamba yabo ubabuze ukuthi ikhona yini into ekhona for mina. Then you will know. Okay, so I process ngengasho okay, and then letter of ngifuna ngicela senze lama letter wethu sizodlula. Authority executorship 250,000 and less. Authority 250,000 and more. Masiqala kube nama-million once nje kwanendlu eOrlando letter of executorship ngoba eOrlando ayisekho indlu less than 500,000 angithi qinisele vumelana angithi once kwanendlu immovable assets usuyazi ukuthi wena you need a letter of what, of executorship. Letter of authority there is no need to bother attorneys ngayo because nokuthi ukuthatha imali yakho mhlambe imali yakho izidleka, you can go to the master, they're very efficient, they help a lot ne. They will do the letter for you, nihambe niye ema-bank nishare kahle nibuyisele kubo kube right. But where ama-assets aqala athi 250 and more, uyathanda awuthandi bazalwane, ngeke ngichazele le part. Uyathanda unjani? Uyayidinga le ncwadi. And uyathanda awuthandi uzombhadala lo mmeli. This is the biggest issue we have as attorneys. Abantu abafuni ukukhokha. Hayi uthi ayikho imali, angithi uzothola imillion wena. Angithi uzothola imillion. I-estate ayifani nezinye izinto. Ilalele i-estate ithini. Lena ngizothi nje 2 minutes umama makathandi ngichaze kakhulu ngoba sisenkonzweni angithi mina akangiboni lami ekhona singize ngapha. Yeah, ngikhona soyichaza. Bazalwane abameli bayakhokhelwa. Abameli bayakhokhelwa. Abameli bayakhokhelwa. Sengisho kathatha ngithi abameli banjani? Pay your attorneys. Njengoba usuku umbhadala udokotela, bhadala i-attorney yakho. Angithi udokotela ngeke umbone ungabhadalanga. Mara nina bazalwane nenze njani? Hayi man mabongi man kade sinawe lana man. Hayi bo, nangu sitha manje uyazazi. Hayi man bongi senzele lento man, how yini? Awusenzele nje just ukuthi ukhulume nje 2 words. It's not that. Ngithathwa ngicela lutho luthela. Lutho. Ngiyaxolisa lutho. Kakhulu. I-minutes ne-minutes. Si-charge apha 15 minutes asidlala. Angikwazi ukukhuluma ngemali sabatha gogohle. But ngifuna siyenze lento le because a lot of people ba-change ama-attorneys because abafuna ukukhokha. And you are delaying i-process yokuthi nincedakala ngithi. You start with this attorney, even with criminal matters. Makusayenziwa i-bail. Hayi abantu bayakhokha for i-bail. Ufuna umuntu wakini aphume, awufuna umuntu wakini alale ejele ngithi. Ngiyabanda lapha. Uyabhadala i-bail. Sisaqala senza ama-appearances. How? Just ukuthi ubhadale, just ukuthi upostponile, usukume wathi nje postponed. Angeke, uyadura lo muntu lo. And it's the truth. Ngizayiphatha i-trolley bag yami. I'm gonna bring my gown and my babe. Ngizothi postponed. Angithi? But mina mangingekho, angeke ishiwe la postponed. Ungahlala the whole day ecourt. Angithi? Imetha yakho ingapostponwanga ngithi? Because mina ngikho kuzothi postponed. Wangithi yabona? So when you pay lawyers, you are not paying them. Yabona njengamanje, let's say I was being paid here. Ngenze example. Let's say I was being paid ngiqala ukukhuluma ngoba isikhathi ngo 3:30 ne. You are not paying only for ukuthi ngiqala ukukhuluma ngo 3:15. You are paying for le minyaka le yadi ngangazi ngisesikolweni. Ngingalali. Ubhadala le minyaka le ya khona into esiyenzayo kuthiwa it's law school ne. Ubhadala leyo minyaka le because after getting okay bengithi ngizofika nakule ngizofika explain le bengifuna for aba young because a lot of young people have been asking me ukuthi sifika kanjani kuba yathela singaqeda. But you are paying for all of those things. Mangikhuluma ngemali kuthiwa ngisheshisa singidlule ke. But pay your attorneys ubhadala malini 3.5% ne of the entire estate. Leyo mali ithathwa kuphi? Kwi-estate awuyibhadala wena cash. What you pay cash is only consultation fee ne. Ukuzobingelela ube ne-file uyabhadala for that. Semva kwalokho i-3.5% izothatha kuphi? Kwi-estate. Sengenzela ukuthi abameli bayenzela ningathi bayanirobha ne. It's the law, it's gazetted, it's what they are entitled to. But isikhathi sami siphelile ngajumpa ke. Igama lami lelana, isibongo sami lesiyana, inamba yami leyana, i-address yami leyana. Amen.
Ibandla lithini? You still want more? Ngempela. Okay, ngicela nibhale nama questions enu phansi. Khona manje ngizobiza uSister Joy. Bese mayeqeda ukwenza the practical part nakhumbule kuseni azange siqede. Sinishaya ngapha nangapha. Mayeqeda nje, hawo sizovulela wonke ama questions enu. Sizowavulela wonke ama questions enu boyithu abosisi abafundile kakhulu bazokwazi ukuthi ba-answere all your practical questions. Ukuthi ngempela mangazange ngibhale umuntu ngenza njani. O mangakwazanga ukuthi ngithathe lena ngenza kanjani. Mangithatha loan ngenza kanjani. Mangabe ngenze kanje ngenza kanjani. Ne? Asa set up ngicela sishaye ingoma. Number bani? Number 69. Dala sigcina. Dala sayigcina number 69. Uthi chorus uShantal bengimfuna aculisa ama chorus la she was not here. So phumulanga semanzini acwengekileyo khona uJesu lindile siyombona lapha so phumulanga semanzini siphumulanga semanzini siphumulanga semanzini omthombo wokuphila ngakho kuJesu Kristu woza uqiniswe ume nguyena manzi okuphila nathi mabusoma sophumulanga semanzi nasemanzini umthombo wokuphila.
Amen, church. Am I audible? Not. Am I audible now? Yes. Now I am. Me right? That was very interesting. Number sing for Nakubeg. Usropile yazubong. Usropile. This is. Konjaniyenza nibiza pro bono work. Come on, Bungi. Could have given us more, but it was quite interesting. I actually did take her numbers, and I think these are practical lessons, right, that we need to take in and not only listen but apply them, because people stay behind and they fight, and we want to avoid as much infighting as possible. But I think she practically cautioned us also around when we minimize debt, etc., then she can track your assets. Then at least the house in Orlando is yours. And it does not belong to the bank. But I just wanted us to recap, because I think it's more interesting, masizo qoqa, right? It's easy for me to stand up here and talk and think I've simplified matters, but it's better when we actually do get questions, because then we are able to clarify certain things for you guys. So let's just recap. In the morning, we spoke about 4 things, this is the last one, being minimizing debt. But what was the first thing we spoke about? Planning. And estate planning is part of planning, right? Planning is very important. You plan for when you're alive, you plan for when you are dead, right? Planning is one of the most important things. The second one, we need to build an emergency fund, right? We need to do what? Build an emergency fund, because we do not know when tough times shall come, right? We don't know when tough times shall come. Number 3, invest, right? We spoke about investing, and the Bible says 7 or 8. No, not years. Ventures. Talks about diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. No? Diversify your portfolio. You need to diversify in your investments, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Our institutions are just formalizing these things for us. But to know these things, the only thing that we need to now do is to make that better, right? It mustn't just circulate and not generate excess, because that's what we do, right? Ngikipha u-250 per month. Makfigu month 10, I know ngizothola 2.5. It hasn't grown. And so what we need to do is to do better there and say, okay, how do we, because that is collective investment schemes. In actual fact, white people have stolen these things and concepts from you. What you've always been doing, nihlanganisa imali, that's a collective investment scheme. That's a collective. You're putting together your funds. You can do better by taking those funds, because as a collective, it means more, right? So that's another one. And then the last one was minimizing debt. The reason why we said this was because we know that the rich rules over the poor, right? And as long as we are indebted, we are practically poor until we come out of our borrowing state. And so we said we'll talk about some of the practical tools that we need to implement as we build this relationship. And I always talk about this as a relationship. How is your relationship with money? Maybe let me look to young people as well. I mean, we go in, Nabazali can actually help us here. When you are in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a love relationship, whatever it is, when you're in a relationship, what is the most important thing? For someone to know that they mean a lot to me, what must I do for them? I must give them time. I must share my time. When we spoke about time being the most important resource, right? And for someone to know that they mean a lot to me is if I allocate a portion of that resource to build that relationship with them. And so our money also wants us to have a relationship with it. And how do we have a relationship with our money? By making time for our finances, right? Relationship, whether it's with a human being or with your money, finances. Imagine something, and a relationship, but it's something, how many of us actually go a day without using money? A day without using money. Jan, don't you travel? You don't travel? Don't you eat? You don't buy bread? You don't eat. But it's it's practically impossible, right? Because we actually use this commodity on a daily basis. Whether we are buying money, we use money every day. But it's one of the most terrible relationships we have. Right? Asinayo relationship nemali. Kodwa into esisebenzisa njani? Every day, njalo. Usebenzisa imali mara we understand leyo mali. Our understand ukuthi isebenza kanjani, and that's why we say we need to break those habits. I need to make time for my money. I need to make time. Ask yourself, am I making enough time to plan my finances? And that means sitting down, understanding, because budgeting is practically planning. Budget is a plan of how you intend to execute, or to spend that money. So you sit down and you say, okay, how much income is coming in? And that's why I'm showing you, income, it's one of the things that we make. I spoke about income, and we get income in various ways. Abanye bayithola through grants, funding, abanye bayayisebenzela, abanye bayathengisa, income, right? You sit down and you say, how much income is actually coming into this household? Kungena malini, like hi. And then you sit down and you plan on those finances. Okay, ngene imali engaka, kuphuma imali engaka. This is what I'm planning to do. You have your plans, you set down your plans. And I think I'll get to it when I talk about comparison, because one of the things that get us into trouble is because we don't treat our finances very personally. Right? It's my income, but I want to spend it according to someone else's terms. So if my friends are going where, despite the fact that I didn't actually plan for that excursion, yena uplanile, sayangifaka in their plans. Sekakufaka last minute, mngani, where are you? We are planning to go where they planned. Yabona uthi we are planning to. Sekakufaka in their plans. You did not have the intention to go to where you're going, but because we are people nabangani, there you go with the crowd, right? And that makes you deviate from our plans wako that you initially had for yourself. Ngiyafika nakubantu abadala, because they also have the same habits. Commitment. In a relationship, we do what? We commit, right? You commit. I'm committed to this person. I'm committed to this friendship. I'm committed. Same as money. We need to commit to our financial goals, right? You set the financial goals, and nakhona we make sure that our financial goals are what? Are realistic. And for them to be realistic, about smart goals, it has to be specific. What am I saving for? There has to be a target, otherwise then you will tap into those savings funds. So you need to understand, this is what I'm trying to get to, this is the goal I'm trying to get to. And so it is very specific because you can identify and you name the goal. It must be measurable. It's going to take me approximately so long or so much time to actually reach there. And so I need to be putting aside imalengag to be able to meet my goal, right? It needs to be achievable. I mean, I can't sit here and say, actually, my goal is to have 1 million by the end of the year. No. I can if I've got ideas of how I'm going to get that 1 million, or is it even practical? I can't say my goal is to have 1 million and currently I only have 250 in my pocket, it's April. So there has to be ideas. It's either because I know there's this thing that I'm doing, there's that. So your goals need to actually be what? Achievable and realistic. We need to set realistic goals, because the danger of setting unrealistic goals is that we become quickly discouraged. You become discouraged. That's why a lot of us have stopped setting weight goals, because you're like, oh, angfigi. Eventually you just end up saying, yes, my goal is to be healthy. My goal is, because it's discouraging when you're setting targets and goals that it seems like awfiki. So make sure that even when you set your goals are realistic and they are time bound. No, give yourself time. Just like when you go to university and say, I actually want to attain this degree in 4 years, you put in the effort and the time to attain it in 4 years, and after 4 years, uyazi ukuthi uyafika. So everything, every goal must be time-bound, right? So you need to be committed. In a relationship, what happens when we compare? Mara, next door, keeping up with the Jones. What happens? It makes your relationship suffer, right? Because you want things where you don't understand ukuthi abo Jones bayithule kanjani. Umfundisi ukhulumelela ukuthi abanye bayagebenga, and you're comparing yourself with abantu abayigebengu. So comparison is very dangerous, and that's why we say practical tools is to avoid comparison. Every household is different, and I always make this example, especially for the youth. When I started my articles, I need to know my story. Most I told you, my dad could only afford so much, and I had to pretty much make excess through tutoring, through whatever university, so that I could have access. A friend of mine, we were doing our honors year. A friend of mine, the dad invited us, the Val, and they were a surprise 21st. A surprise 21st, and we're all happy. And guess what the gift was? It was a car, a GTI, what? Ne? A car. We were in honors, right? Now okay, so that's at the back of my mind. She's fortunate, it's nice. We get to articles. Then you start seeing these Mini Coopers. Remember when I was having taxi, ne? Start seeing these Mini Coopers drive, these what. Had I not had that experience, I was probably going to be caught off guard and put under pressure to get myself a car that I couldn't afford. Because we all come from different households. Our backgrounds are different. And so I can't compare myself to umuntu engazi ukuthi kubo bayenza kanjani. You know? And so you look here. You don't compare. What is it that I can do? What can we do at home? And it's especially for the youth as well that you understand amandla wasekhaya. You know, how much is amandla wasekhaya ngakanani? Futhi kusuke kuqale wena uthi ayikithi they won't be able to mngani ungangi-invite because I know ukuthi ekhaya we won't be able to afford this. Instead of putting yourself under pressure, wanting to commit suicide, threatening your parents that you're going to commit suicide if they don't do 1, 2, 3. But it starts when we actually understand. That's why I'm Ngiti. And you plan with your kids, because when they have that first, the front seat into the family finances, we underestimate how much they can actually understand. We take it for granted. They can actually understand. If you sit down and you explain, listen, I mean, how? Where else are you expecting your friends to rob a bank? Where else are you expecting them to get it? You know, so we avoid comparisons. And the last practical tool I wanted to mention is communicate, which is exactly what we do in a relationship, right? For a relationship to be healthy, we do what? We communicate, right? And even when things aren't going well, now what's the best thing that solves some of the arguments? Communication, right? And the same with your money. That there comes a time when you actually realize that, yes, manje, I've hit a wall when it comes to my finances. Kunzima, and I realized that I'm in trouble. And the one thing that the pastor mentioned, luckily, was that we need to sometimes also consider the assistance of other people, right? Someone who is going to help me and get myself out of the situation in Kuyo. Because unfortunately, Basalwane, you can't pray away some of the situations that you've gotten yourself into. You can't just pray and it disappears. You pray, but you need to act as well, right? So we can't pray away some of the challenges, and so we need to communicate and to get help. So I said, you track and reduce expenses by following a budget. Try and stick to it, right? We've said you pay off your existing debt, and as you are paying off existing debt, avoid getting into more debt, right? And that's why sometimes when you get yourself to a point where you need debt consolidation, which is very dangerous, but when you get yourself to a point where you need debt consolidation, even by law, you are not allowed to have excess, because then for the bank, for a bank, when you get yourself into, it's reckless lending, right? It's called reckless lending. So even the law tries to protect you from yourself. right? They also try and protect you from yourself. But no, clearly you can't afford, and so we'll also make sure that the financial institutions do what? Do not give you that excess, right? And then we spoke about building an emergency fund, setting financial goals, and do not avoid having those tough conversations, be it in the house, endlini, masekunzima. Talk about the stuff. Explain to, because I heard a story that there's a child, you know, when things are rosy and things are going well, yeah, you're able to afford, your child goes to nice private schools, kumnand. The moment things become terrible, ukhulumile about the husband who lost some properties and they had to now repossess the other property and whatnot. Those things are realities of life, they do happen. So the family had to downsize. The family had to really took a knock. Imagine you're staying at Clifton, now you need to move from Clifton to go stay with someone, ekaya. And she couldn't deal with that pressure of that downgrade. And she didn't understand. I think the first thing was the parents didn't explain. All of a sudden, umntana niyamshifta niyammuva, because sabantwana, we pretend like, or rather we treat kids like akse abantu. And, we treat abantwana ukuthi hayi. It affects them mentally as well. Finances have got a big impact on mental health. And so even with your kids, sit down and explain ukuthi izinto ziyashintsha, zishintshile izinto because of 1, 2, 3. Get them to understand that the situation is no longer the same at home. To avoid some of the things, we know kids who commit suicide at 10 years. And that's my daughter's age. I can't look at my daughter and think that she's thinking of killing herself. But you get kids that are that young committing suicide. Sad. What could, yes, Usatani has just gone beyond, he's beyond disgusting at this point, And so it's very important that we care about mental health yaba ntwana by making sure that we also have some of these tough conversations with them. Understand. This is understand this, so we move along together as a family unit, right? And the last thing I wanted to end with before we get to the actual the questions and answers, because that's where it becomes a lot more practical, is that we need to get to a point, especially as Black people, that we break the cycle of financial illiteracy, right? Which means not having the knowledge and skill of handling imali. We need to move away from that and actually break the cycle. Why? Because the kids, if there's one thing that our kids inherit, is the financial illiteracy from home. Right? That's the one thing that we are able to pass on from generation to generation. And we are able to do that very well. So we need to get to a point where we break that cycle. Because why? The children watch you make poor decisions, poor financial decisions, because they're not getting enough teaching. Guess what happens? They internalize those habits. Ne? They internalize those habits. They don't delay their gratification. Everything must happen when I want it. Things must, fall and happen. So they internalize them, and those habits become part of who they are. And if so njalo, that's why I don't blame our parents much, because they also didn't get this, but it's up to us to break those cycles, right? Then they internalize those habits and they become a part of them. And guess what happens? Because that's all they know, they pass it on to their children pass it. So at some point, we need to get to a point where we're like, okay, it must stop with me, right? It must stop with me. That's why sometimes you like it when you hear, I'm the first graduate at home. Make sure you're not the last. So at some point, the buck must stop with you. I'm the first Black person. Make sure you're not the last. I'm the first. We like being first, but when you actually do break the cycle, you make sure that you are not the last. And so you bring and you pull others to come with you. And so those are very important things that even when we learn about, when you educate yourself and when you find these gems, share it with other people. Share. This is how I'm doing it, and that's why we need to actually sit round table. How do you do it in your house? Okay, maybe our homes are not different, but we can get the high level principles. This is how I do it. How do you do it with your kids? Or this is how I'm doing. How do you do it with your family? And so we need to get to a point where we actually make this conversation very topical. Ukuthi kungabi taboo, mawukhuluma ngemali kungabi into. Imagine thina sisafara kanjani bafethu, because we even comparing salaries. You know, white people compare their salary. They talk about their salaries. We've been brainwashed that we're going to get fired. I don't know if that's true. That we can't talk about salaries, don't discuss those things. But how am I going to benchmark myself if I don't talk about some of these things? Maybe you might not do it at work, maybe you might do it with your peers elsewhere, but we are never really sure. And it's something that is so private, but and it's funny because we keep that part very personal. But when it comes to our planning, we don't even plan well because we compare ourselves with people esingazi nokuthi kungena malini. Uyayibona inkinga? Uyayibona inkinga? So it's better when your friends themselves actually get to understand, ube the first one to say, yes, this one can miss me, friend. I'll see you next month. I'll actually budget for it next month. Young people who get into the workplace and it's nice to buy coffee from Seattle every day. Those 40 rands, they pile up. Remember what it said? Guti, a small leak can sink your ship. So those unaccounted, and when we are budgeting, we don't account for that 40 rand or that 20 rand that went there or this. When you do that and you account for that, it's actually, it's not ukungabi nemali. It's actually not being a good steward. It's actually not being a good planner. Because when we keep. A lot of things need to be planned for. Even those little expenses, you can literally create a pot. This is for those small things. But it doesn't mean when you budget, we as ncintsha. That's not what budgeting means or planning. Planning means you set aside even for those other things that you want to do that may seem wasteful to other people. But the nice thing is wenzeni uyiplanelile leyo nto leyo. Lo chocolate umplanelile ukuthi at least it's going to sustain for my chocolate one for the rest of the month. But those little things need us to account for. Another thing that we make a mistake of is that we allow the financial institutions to decide what we can afford. We've given that role, we've actually ceded that responsibility to the financial institutions, and we've told them to tell us what we can afford. And then we lie when they ask us to include all the information because you want that car. Opposite way altogether. We've actually gone about it the very wrong way, where the actual way should be, this is how much I am willing on a monthly basis to part with for this asset or liability at that point. It's how much I'm willing to part with. Then you say, what is within this? Then your finance determines the car you will drive, not you. Your pocket determines which car can I afford at this point. And that's what you buy. Otherwise, you will be swimming in debt. You're not supposed to be paying a bond for 20 years. That's a very long time. That's a very long time. In actual fact, I'd say maximum. I said maximum, target, 10. Maximum. You are pushing it, Masofia 10. Shouldn't be paying for a house for 20 years. That's a very long time. Imagine, umntana uyazalwa azabe na 20 usoloko ubhatala. They're an adult at that point. They've already left your house. But it's a very long time to be paying for a house. And why does it take us 20 years? Even the cars take us longer than 5 years because we've got other balloon payments that we need to refinance. It's because we don't plan. We've allowed someone else to take that responsibility away from you. And now it's about time that we take that control back. And in actual fact, angifuna ukuzalaya Orlando East another time when I see my nice young ladies bahleli laphayana and they're starting working and they tell me that bona they are paying off a car for that long or they're going to buy a property for, because we need to be the ones to decide that this is what I can afford. And because this is how much I'm willing to sacrifice on a monthly basis, then lengifuna imengafika ushilo mfundisi ekseni ukuthi mawunganayo awunayo. And we need to teach ourselves that. Ukuthi mayingekho imali, it's fine, I can wait. You've been waiting. Yes, you've been waiting. And now all of a sudden, now it's a rush to get these things. Wait. Wait. Give yourself time. Wait. You know this journey, and someone actually said this to me when we were still in varsity, that this journey is your own. Like you are the one who's going to get to the finish line first. Ngoba uhamba wedwa. So nanoma ungawa kangakanani along the way, wozofika number one. Because it's your own journey. Awugijimi namuntu next to you. This is personal. It's you and your finances. It's you and your goals. It's you and your journey. And so you don't look to the left. You don't look to the right. You focus on your journey because you get distracted. And then masesihlala sesikhokhasa. The only time we caucus is when we caucus ukuthi kahle kahle tithe is not biblical. Leyo kahle ingiphethe kabi, because a lot of young people actually say tithing is not biblical. They say, where in the New Testament have you seen that? And so those are some of the challenges that we come across and that we face. And I understand why, because asnayo imali ye tithe. So the better way for me to actually justify why I'm not tithing is to say, I don't have to tithe. Right? Because asnayo. Why would I come and say, angnayo, Sizayan? Amand? Why would I say that? It's because we have been very reckless and irresponsible. But I think maybe just for the purposes of having this conversation with the audience, maybe let me pause here and then let's welcome our questions and answers.
Hey, ibandla lithini? Hey, ngathi bangakhuluma bangaqedi. They are talking to me. Ngicela nilungiseni ke ama questions. Angazi soqala kuphi. Maybe ngicela ukuthi siyenze in this fashion. Ukuthi nisondele eduzane because we don't have a roving mic today. Angazi asinama battery. Ngicela maybe nisondele eduzane so that each and every one of us sikwazi ukuthi sizwe kahle. Mhlawumbe mawusuzwile question, you'll never be able, you will cease to ask the same question over and over again, ne? So mawusuzwile ama questions, ngicela ukuthi ubuze enye engabuzwanga. Is that clear? Yes, we don't have to repeat questions. Sisase ne Vespa, by the way. Sisase ne Vespa, uSister Joy usazoshayela iVespa. So please, ngicela nisondele abanama question. Umabongi uphi? Oh, okay. Please, both ends. As Sister Mabongi, Sister Joy. So, order lapaya. Naya lining up. Okay, Mr. Mabele.
Yeah, thank you. Sisikala kuphi? Sikala ngusisibongi or sikala any question? Anyway. Okay. Sikala ngomama. Yeah, the last one. Yeah. I think Mageti, we should not allow people to plan for us. Tina, we should be planning. Tina, sis planela singal. Ukhulume housing la etikona kune bond thatha 20 years, and then all of us we need to undergo that session there, and it's so hectic kunzima, we cannot stand for it. I was once employed as a Google housing agent. Now ngithi kubo the bosses bami ngithi ngine client decide ukuthenga indlu cash. But no, they were so frustrated, no? And I mean, I was so happy ngithi ngifaka imali to the company, yes. But no, they were so, no, lo muntu awumeka kancane, maybe next year sizomconsiderisha. The point was, in 20 years, they gain a lot. Kule 20 years, uthenga ngayo bond, that house ibhadala 3 times instead of paying once. Ngoba usazobhadala interest, ubhadala whatever. But if we decide ukuthi ngifuna ukuthenga cash as the whole, baba so frustrated. Now another point kamama. Ubongiwe ne? Wathoni kune point asincishe yona i-registration of property. But ngizongena kuyo nje kancane ngoba kuzoba yi-1 and 1. Sizoyenza i-1 and 1. Yeah, ngizongena kuyo. Kuzo.
Ngiyantimer. No, ungahambi but Mabel. Ngiyantimer 1 minute so that sibe ne wonke umuntu athola ithuba. Mangabe sesiqedile bonke sizophinda futhi.
1 minute. Yeah, ikona le registration ye property. Yeah, I think most of us, the black people, masilwa lapha ku master of the High Court. Sine point ukuthi if abazali bami bayashona, abazali bami, and I'm taking over the property. So there was the point ukuthi i-property fanele ngiregister under i-attorneys. But before, i-property boy register noma ku legal aid, a cheap lawyer, as long as you kube na that legal paper. But it turns out to be difficult. Silwe siqabane ngama families is because now i-procedure lena is too expensive. Most of the people abakuma properties asasemagameni abazali babo. Now to transfer those things to our names, it's too expensive. Ayikho indlela engenziwa ngcono ukuthi ke i-registration of property benjani. Thank you.
Ngicela wesibili sothatha 3 siniphe i-chance yoku-answera.
Ke dumedisa kereke ka lebitso la Jesu. Okay, na question aka eo atone, and I'm happy it's a Sabbath, ne? So please be honest. I saw a video, ne, about, I'm talking about a wheel. I'm talking about a wheel. And I'm actually saying this because now you mentioned 2 things, a bank, that we should draft our wills with attorneys, and then we should keep them at the bank. Right. Now, here's my issue. If my assets are less than 100K, why should I register or have a will if my assets are under 100K? Going to the issue, I get it 3 times. I'm a lawyer, I'm an attorney, ne? So how much are you going to get from the assets 100K? How much is the bank going to get? That's where I'm going. So my question may be, which assets, how much should, at least as an attorney, which assets, how much should I be having when I die for me to actually be having a will? I don't know if I make sense. So I get araba dali, araba ya, so haki batli ya kuri kamanzo ma minimum so that ha thola share high, li banka thola share, ke sale ke na le something. Because there's an issue about when people die and then they have assets and stuff like that, when they actually now make claims, Sister Amanda usala anali 10%, everybody unkile share high. Kapa usala anali 40%, bangile share kaufel. So kamanzo we end up usna that much. I'm just saying, based on the assets and the percentage, based on the assets that we have. So at what point would you encourage somebody to have a beneficiary and somebody to actually have a will, you know? So because situation having a beneficiary is better than having a will, depending on how much do I have. So that's where I'm going. I hope I make sense. Am I clear? Thank you so much.
Did you hear it, Alsaman? I'm borrowing the greetings she has just shared. So, Sis Joy, Nike go to say on the issue of emergency fund, as Christians, you know, as Christians, Adventists, waiting for the soon coming of the Lord. How many months' salary or how much can you recommend as an emergency fund? And then now, Sis Langa, I am married and we die with a will. We have 1 child, a boy, he gets married in community of property. The wife to my son, can she inherit, you know, what I have left for my son if I don't want the daughter-in-law to inherit my inheritance? No, she's a daughter-in-law. She's not my daughter. My son is here. I want her.
No, we'll give it to them to respond, then after we will continue.
Amen bazalwane. Amen bazalwane. Unfortunately lo ngithi malo ayabiza shame. Mara ngiyabona ngelinye ilanga soyiphinde lento ne. Maybe next year this time ne. Yeah. I think fanele siphinde because I was just doing a run through ne. And Umanta is my friend. She can call me at any time. Ngiyamangala ezobuza ama question phambi. Mara uyanceda wonke umuntu. Okay, registration of property. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. Ama-conveyancers athatha ifee yayo. Ngendlela enzima ngayo indaba ye-conveyancing. Conveyancing is when you change amagama kwi-property. Angithi, I don't know what happened to my voice now. Angazi. But conveyancing mawushintsha indlu, asithi indlu ibibiza ugogo nomkhulu bami. Angithi, abasekho bonke labo bantu sekusele abazali bami. Abazali mabefuna ukushintsha befaka igama labo. Khona imali ekokayo. Uyathanda uthandi ke leyo akusiyo ngisho imali ke unfortunately ezakuthina ngabameli. Imali efuneka e-deed office. Kune app esisebenzisayo sithi indlu yakho ukuthi manje ngimangizobuyela kuyo asithi indlu yakho i1 million. Iza kubalela la app ithi 46,000 ama conveyancing cost. Into esingeke siyenze lutho umthetho awuvumi. Njenge security asema security kanjalo umthetho awuvumi bazalwane. Umthetho osho kanjalo yi-app uyayifaka imali yakhona ukuthi indlu imali engaka ibale yona. Ngithi yabona into le. So akusiyona imali umuntu ayicabangaye yedwa ukuthi how much am I going to charge you? Unfortunately into enjalo leyo. I think ubaba ngimphendulile ngithi into engcono engayenza as ama siblings. Kancane kancane. Hlanganisani imali kancane kancane hlanganisani imali nize nikhokhe ngoba iya complicate uma benisele no4 ekhaya ngithi ashona omunye bashona abazala ngithi nginifanele inheritance noba u4 bagcine beshona bonke abanye abantu nisala ni2 kuzofana ushare nezingane zabantwana babantwana bakini leyo ndlu leyo kanti kube nashintsha besakhona abantu bephila ngabe ingane ayingenanga kule ndawo manje sekunzima ke ngoba manje mina ngizothi kagogo la bese wena uthi kini umthetho uthi kithi sonke bese siyaxabana angiyaxolisa bengifuna si-address i-issue yezindlu lezi zaselokushini ehleze ibangwa ne ukuthi singayisolva kanjani ngizokunika isolution ngeminute hlanganani njengomndeni nisele nayi indlu imali engaka hambani ne-conveyance angithi nithola ukuthi ile ndlu njobe i700,000 nizobhadala malini bese ni creator bengithi ngizofika kuma trust but isikhathi anginaso unfortunately izinto zakalo njengoba ziningi ufuna uchaze into eziningi ni create into ekuthiwa i-family trust manithanda nizoyi-create kube i-family trust manithanda kuzoba i-business trust if nama-intentions ukuthi le ndlu lena nizoyirentisa nithole imali ngithi then ningayi-create ibe yini i-business trust kodwa uma kuyinto enifuna ukuyikhipha as an inheritance for all your children ekhaya kube into ekhona njalo ni create into ekuthiwa yini ke i-family trust. Next time mangibuya asikhuluma izinto sikhuluma i-trust angithi next time next year this time sikhuluma ini trust kodwa iyona ndlela leyo engcono yokuthi sonke sibe ne-equal share yalama assets angabi khona u-anti okhethwayo u-anti Amanda yena indlu yakena ngobani yedwa abanye bekhona ngithi yabona nto leyo mayi-trust ikwi-equal share sonke la ekhaya yabani eyethu abazukulu bayini la ekhaya ama-beneficiaries from what this trust but anginaso isikhathi sokuchaza ngama-tax akhona ukufunctiona kwakhona imithetho yakhona kodwa iyona ndlela esibone kuyona engcono yokuthi izindlu zasemakhaya zikwazi ukusherwa masisebenza i-practicality yakhona ngithi iyona ayikho into ebangwa njengezindlu zaseSoweto futhi West azikho nje izinto ezibangwa njengazeSoweto amen sidlulile endle ezindlini sesikila la ukuthi i-minimum amount i-minimum appointment i-minimum of a will ukuthi ikhona yini minimum ngithena masenza i-will i-will ungafaka noma ngisho i-cellphone i-will ungafaka ngisho i-laptop angithi i-will into esisizayo nje ukuthi kwenzekani ngento zakho uma unganayo imali yokwenza i-will bazalwane ungayibhala phela ekhaya abasayinayo akube itiye elincane lasekhaya bakithi ungafaka abantu abaningi akube nje into encane yalabo bantu abakhona it's fine But mina ngi-advise anginayo i-minimum amounts. I can't decide for anyone. Mawubona nje ukuthi uma ngingashona kungaba nenkinga ngama-assets ami, ngithi kuwe yenza iwili. Mawuhleli uthi uyabuka, ngizoyenza ngayo example umngane wami ngithi uManto ngiyamazi. Umngane wami uManto unendlu, umngane wami uManto unemoto. Kodwa umngane wami akanawo umyeni, akanazo izingane. Ngithi uma eshona umngane wami uManto unama-siblings ngiyamazi, angithi mina engimaziyo. Uma eshona uManto soba nenkinga laphaya. Ukuthi-ke nje kuma-siblings akhe ubani othathayo ubani ongathathi. Angithi uyabona? uManto uyena obaziyo ukuthi kubo abantwana bakubo kanjani. Ubani ongaba responsible for leya ndlu yakhe leya ukuthi ikwazi i-create i-generate income abantwana bakubo bakhona ukuphila. Angithi ngoba ukhetha kanjalo ubani ongakwazi ukuyenza lento isebenza abantu bephile ngayo ungasekho. Angithi uyabona? So angikwazi ukuthi ngithi minimum, but leyo video ngiyibonile nami ya-circulate. Social media, this is my thing. Social media is a good platform. Social media and the internet is good. It's amazing. It's perfect. But be careful. Not everything on social media is true. Abantu baze bazosilwisa ngithi yabona bese niyasirobha kanti lento sakhona ukuzenzela. Umuntu creator i-content. She spoke about content. 2 minutes, 2 seconds a picture. You take it, you make it reality. Ngithi yabona ufike lapha kithi and we tell you uzoboshwa wena ubugebengu lobo wenzayo. Uyabona? Because uthathe so mawubheka social media, it's good, it's fine. Kodwa bukusisa kahle yabona. The final lines and see what can you take for yourself and research more on your own. Now internet is very good, you can research, find out information, but ayidluli ke futhi i-experience. Internet izokutshela ukuthi this is very simple, ungayenza 1 2 3 4. Ngikutshele mawufika ngeke ukhona ukwenzakala. Uhambe uyotshela omunye umuntu akwenzele, ubuye back kumina because I told you, experience has told me awukhona ukuyisolve kanje lento. Experience ke yikho ibalekile, ngithi uyazi ukuthi into ayisolve kanje. So my friend, I don't have a minimum amount, I don't have a maximum amount. Uma unezinto ezingaxabanisa abantu noma ubunezinto ezingasala zingaziwe zenziwe njani, put those things in a will. That's my advice. Right? And then umama ke umfundisi. I love a question. A lot of us feel ngathi selfish. It's not. It's the truth. Angithi lona ufuna ukushela abantwana bakhe directly ngithi lona is a daughter-in-law. So iwili inceda ngani? Ngizokutshengisa makune will ngenayo iwili. Makune will. My inheritor from estate yama parents wakhe umuntu. No spouse you are inheritor. No spouse gets a share, especially if they are married in community of property. Angithi akhumbula ukuthi undlela oshade ngayi impact kanjani yonke into. So if they are married in community of property, any donation, inheritance, ama bequests that are made, they form part of the what? Of the estate. Yalowo muntu loyo. But mawune will, you khona clause sayifaka, it's about 6 or 7 lines. Ethi any inheritance that I give to my children will not form part of their community of property. Wenzani? You can secure your children. Ngoba imshado ayikho guarantee bafethu asinya. Imshado ayikho yabo. You don't know. It might not be even divorce. It might be even death. Asingayithathi yabona. It might not be even divorce, but it might be death. But what you can do, you can give things to your children and make sure that they are kept only by your children. And ukhumbule into once you fall into the community of property, creditors can go after the donation you made to your children. Angithi yabona because of indlela oshade ngayo wena. 1, number 2, indlela abazali bakho ababe reckless ngayo. So in your will ungakhohlwa ukufaka i-clause eshoyo ukuthi should I die and I'm bequesting this to my children, lento should not form part of their community of property or marriage or whatever agreement. Ihlale injani iyodwa. Amen.
Siyabonga. So there was another question around emergency funds. Ukuthi, as people who are waiting for the soon coming Savior, how long should we be planning for? And I guess we'll just go back to Proverbs 13, verse 16, right, which says a wise man plans ahead, right? So we are living here, and if uNkulunkulu ngempela wanted us to not work and do whatever, then we would probably all be sitting here and waiting for the Lord and being idle. But that's not what we ought to do. And emergency fund is there. I think the term is clear. It's for emergencies, right? And there are certain instances where if you lose a job, it might not necessarily take you a week to find another job. And so the purpose of an emergency fund is there to be able to sustain you while you are looking, first, number one, as you are grieving the loss of that job, and then also to give you the ability to continue whilst you are looking for another employment. And so most people recommend that you at least have up to 6 months worth of your income, right? Then you get 6 months worth of your income, because you know that this fund is likely going to sustain you for the next 6 months while you are trying to figure things out. It just buys you time. And so 6 months at minimum or more. But obviously you don't get discouraged. That's why we say we build it. Kancane kancane, siyalahlela into that emergency fund, because it's there to serve for emergencies. And that's the worst, right? That's like the ultimate eventuality. But there are other emergencies that happen in life, right? There's a funeral, death, exactly. There's a death in the family. Aguna ma policy. Aguna ma, do you understand? There's nothing to bury that person. So you can also tap into those funds to assist umdeni, right? To be able to do some things. Umntana uyagula, and you really, it's something that you're like, ish, I don't trust this, I don't trust that. I actually want to take my child to go see this type of specialist, and the specialist requires such and such amount of money. And because fast, it's an emergency that we actually see the specialist, you tap into those funds to do that and you replenish. So you make sure at least they cover me for at least 6 months, and as you tap into it, you replenish those funds. I hope that's clear.
Kona lapho nami noma mediator nami nginembuzo. Ngizonipha nje opportunity mara oyi-one calculation. How do you calculate that emergency fund? Buti ungeza.
Oh, ngibulise igama likaYesu Kristu. Bengicela ubuzo sisilanga apha ndinengxaki andimvanga ngela xesha ebethetha. Utatam wasweleka ngo-2000 enabantwana koomama ngoomama abahlukeneyo. So ukusweleka kwakhe engatshatanga namnye kwaba mama, kodwa abanye abantwana bafumana imali, mna azange ndiyifumane. So bendifuna uqonda le ndawo athi ufonela kuyo ukwazi le nto ithi I don't know.
Okay, Buti.
Okay, ngiyabonga. Imbuzo wami omningi sekawuphendulile uma bongi makakhuluma nosisi. Mara khona okunye la engicabanga ukuthi angizwanga kuvezwa ngendaba yama-will nama-inheritance, especially izinto ezibiblical. Uma bongi makacala ukukhuluma la khona ayikhulumile ukuthi state uma umuntu angayenzanga i-will sibiza wonke umuntu simuphe wonke, and it's biblical. So ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi thina masenza i-will we advise ukuthi senze kanjalo, singabandlulula abantu ngoba i-conflict ngathi icalwa yithi, especially even nanezindlo. Enye iphendulekile ke ukuthi indlo mhlawumbe uyasho ke ukuthi mara indlo ngicabanga ukuthi fanele kube ikhaya. And then enye ngithi angitholanga ikhulunywa yile ukuthi masaphila singakafi ifune lifa and mhlawumbe uyabona ukuthi umdala angeke ulwabe usaphila like gobo Abraham, and ungabeli umuntu oyi-one, ubabele konke ngokufana ngoba labantwana bakho noma ngabe lo uzoyidlisa emadayisini umphile, so that kungabi ne-conflict ukuthi uzolwa nalo yena maseka right, uzomlwisela ukuthi wena umphanga. So abantwana bakho bonke, even nekhaya, if ikhaya uyalaba, even nakuwili ithi kusekhaya vele it's a home. Akufanelanga kube ye-house when so feel kube umuntu oyi-one ozothika over just because kuthiwe yena responsible. Kunabantwana ongambheka manje ukuthi responsible, mase ufile lo uthi akekho responsible abe responsible, lo beka responsible angabe responsible. So let's treat our children the same and sibathande, singabheki ukuthi ubani uhlakaniphe ukudlula bani abantwana bakho la.
Ngiyambulisa ngegama kaJesu, amen. Oh, mina owami umbuzo ongapha ko-finance, I hope ngikhulumela nabangani bami nabo bashilo bathi nangiseka la bosisakhuluma ukuthi nje esithina ulusha ni sidinga i-template thizeni ngoba mina masikhuluma cishe ngikhuluma ngami personally hayi angiphili kahle nje ngisuke ekhaya ngafika edrobheni angikwazi ukuhlala elokishini for safety purposes but I can't afford it ne-credit card engibhadala ngithathe every month I'm on a constant loop how do I then get out of this loop because ngiphinda from hand to mouth mangihola titing already sengiphumile like ngilinde kushaya i-2 ngithi ngizoyenza njani so how do you then move away after making bad decisions mind you we have jobs that requires a car we have prerequisite before we can go to the job ukuthi you have to have a car I kept it for 6 months unemployed iba nekweleti or ngibhadala from the emergency fund ngathola umsebenzi now the emergency fund is dry sengithola umsebenzi mara sengiphila kuphi on a loop there's no extra income akusekho kuthizeni sengiphila la senginebond thizeni ke but I'm always paying out there's nothing engenayo ngiphele ngifele tsimo how do you then move or yeah how do you then move away from a loop ne and coming to you Bongile ngisasemncane I think I lived in a family where my dad will sit us down as abhaliwe according to our birth rights omdala uthola yonke into omncane uthola mina soloko ngishaya izandla khona semaphakathini then omdala athole umsebenzi afunde bathi siyakhipha so yakwazi ukuzinakeke sishiya ukuthi uphile hayi ukuthi uthole nje nathi nami if I'm okay and usisi wami uhlele endlini I wouldn't want to fight her uphila why would I go back and say esgababa I can survive myself so omncane if akakwazi ukuthi noma ngaba careless bakushiyele for you to leave you get what I'm saying so thina ekhaya uthe ubaba masekahlala phansi athi hayike wena omdala ngama birthright because sasebancane uzothola indlu omncane uzothola konke okusele mina ngiyaphaphatha usenze ukuthi sibe aware ukuthi uyothola if you want to contest it I speak now then ngiyaspeaka and no mina bazokunakekela omdala the reason why ngimnika omdala uzonakekela abasemuva that's why sihlala phansi sikhulume sithi angukuniki because umdala ngukunika ngoba une responsibility then masekaphuma seyiwela kimi sengijabulise sekuyimanje ne responsibility emuva then ngiphume ukuthi ngiyashada by marriage ngiyaphuma manje sekusele careless according to abazali ngithi senazi ukuthi is careless ukuthi who's your kid careless sekusele yena sesiphumile sesishadile okusesihambile sesifundile makathathe yena ke konke if she has to makathathe I don't have to ukuthi ngicontest angithi sesikhulumile according to birth rights then ngaba succeed masucceed kwasala la kusele khona why not umuntu oyi1 why not umuntu oyi1 enrede sifo ekhaya oyi1 makathole because abanye ses right can we do that or mina it's a comment ukuthi mina I didn't know kana ezinye izinto I shove it down sengibuya kuma archive wami ne when such topics isikhulumwa kana ubuyele emuva ukuthi hayi man ngikhule kenzwa kanje ngiyabonga
Okay, siyabonga sithatha ama answers khona manje ngicela uaddress black tax blacks
Okay. Thank you. All right. But I must also address ukuthi how do we determine or calculate kanjani emergency fund? Nakula masithe siyaplana we said from your income you determine ukuthi niyangizwa ngithi ukuthi from your income yakho ngispenda njani. Where is my money going to, right? You've got, I need to pay school fees, I need to do this, I need to do that. So that's exactly how your emergency fund is determined. Ukuthi, what are my living expenses? Are my living expenses, every month for me to survive that month, how much do I need? And based on that, you save for that 6 months. So that mangabe there is no income coming in, at least you can still cover your living expenses for 6 months or longer. Because sometimes we are mhlambe ubale ne-transport, wabala nan. That transport money can now be diverted to other things. Mhlambe you need to now, but you still have to mhlambe kumele uyokokota kwenye indawo. But it's there to try and say, okay, for me to survive in a month is how much I need at most or at minimum. Let me save up and at least make sure, ukuthi, even if that income is not coming in, I still have this much that is there to sustain me for that month. I hope that was clear. Now I can't tell you what your living expenses are. You have to determine that for yourself. You need to sit down and determine that. And then there was another question that spoke about, now I'm in this state of revolving debt, and how do I come out of it? And I guess a large part of it is that sometimes we think ukuthi lezi zinto enginazo because engizithathe ngesikweletu, I can't return them. Sometimes we are scared of making those decisions. Sometimes we are scared of downgrading. Sometimes we are scared of, I can't move from my apartment in Sandton and go to Erumini. And sometimes, yiti, because we've got this mentality ukuthi abantu bazothini, that you keep yourself in that state. The best thing is to actually do a review and say, can I really afford this car? I understand, yes, I've got, because here's another thing. If I keep this car, how quickly is it going to eat into my emergency fund? So sometimes the best decision is, let me get rid of the car so that I can, emergency fund yami, because ungayithenga futhi. And that's another thing. A car, these are material things for a reason. They're called material because they are replaceable. A house, same story. And hopefully, luckily enough, mhlambe your parents have left you an estate and you've got an inheritance of your parents' home. Nakhona, take it back to the bank and say, let's do an easy sell. Help me sell this thing. Let me downgrade, because that's your way of trying to give yourself a reprieve. Right? You can give yourself a reprieve, you can sell it, or you can rent it. Another thing that we don't understand, especially as young people, is that owning a house is not only the monthly installment. And I think our parents will tell us this. Owning a house comes with other costs. There's the cost that you have to pay for the rates, there's electricity, there's that. Whereas sometimes you might find, at that stage of my life, the best solution for me is to rent. At this stage of my life, I don't have to worry about the upkeep of this house. I don't have to worry about the municipal bills. I don't have to worry. The only thing I need to worry about is water and lights and actually the rental. Sometimes that could be the best thing at the stage you are at in your life. And so you need to try and basically where am I at this point? And then you do things, and your decisions need to follow where you are at that point in life, because the time for you to buy will come. Isikhathi sokuthi uthenge sizofika, and nakhona isikhathi sokuthi uthengise masifikile thengisa. You know, so that's sometimes for us to get a breather. We need to take some of those tough decisions and say, what do I need to let go of? And there's a snowball effect as well, that you start with the smaller debt because that's the most expensive. Credit card is expensive. And so you start by squashing the credit card and say, where can I get reprieve? Okay, let me get rid of this so that I can squash that. Because unfortunately, that one is unsecured. You can't say, you can't get a reprieve from your credit card. You can sell a car, you can sell your house, but a credit card, that's debt you can't get rid of. You need to pay. That's the only thing to do to get rid of it. So you say, where can I get a reprieve first? And then you try and tackle that and say, okay, maybe it's at the snowball effect. Once I'm able to get that, you take that, you squash the credit card. The money will patala ngai credit card, masocetlu patalo tata leyo, and the extra you squash something else, kanjalo. And that's how, unfortunately, we get out of. But if when you are scared of taking the tough decisions of saying, what is it that I actually need to let go of, you will continue in that cycle. You need to eventually say, okay, le melihambe, tough decisions. And sometimes even for parents where you are taking your child to a very good school, sometimes it might be, the tough decision might be your child, you can't afford that school. And so now I need to downgrade, not because you don't want to, but because you can't afford it. And the best thing for you to do is at that point, let me rather take my child out of the school. I'll find extra support, because mhlambe taking them to a different school plus extra support is cheaper than them going to that school. And you start kanjalo. So those are some of the ways that we can actually come out of some of the traps that we have gotten ourselves into. And then we spoke about black tax. I don't like that word, black tax, because we are called to look after one another. As Fani, Ekaya, I might be the one who can afford. My siblings, unfortunately, cannot be the one to afford. So abantwana basekhaya kumele balambe because mina ngiyasebenza and bona bawumthwalo kimi. It doesn't have to work that way. And that's why in your planning, if you know that kusasekhona ekhaya ekumele ngibheke khona, make that part of your planning. So whenever you then take these tough life choices and when you make these tough decisions, ukuthi, where's my next move? Where's my next buy? Make sure that as you make that decision, you also remember that there is a responsibility that you do have at home. And sometimes we say, I mean, there's always a saying, ukuthi, teach a person how to fish as opposed to giving them the fish all the time. And sometimes it could be, ukuthi, how much starting capital do I need to give you for you to be able to sustain yourself? And it's about sitting down and saying, what can we do to get you out of that situation? Because even just giving and giving is unsustainable. And that's another thing, the realities that we also come up with. Ukuthi, the minute, and those are the realities, especially for us black people, ukuthi, mangilahlekelwa umsebenzi, it's not just my household that's impacted. It's my household, nasekhaya. So there's so many people that are impacted by just one event. By one event. And so it's very easy that the moment we are able to free each other from certain responsibilities, and that's me empowering you. Because sometimes kumnandi ngithi mabathembele kuwe all the time when we are phonel, uzothi hey bayahlupha yazi ekhaya bayahlupha. Kumnandi ukuthi balibele bakuhlupha because it makes you feel important. It's not sustainable. That is not sustainable. How do I help you? Let me empower you. And I mean, I get to my nieces no, the only thing that will get you out of your situation is hambe esikolweni. Mina, I don't mind. I can pay for your school fees. Because I know you won't be my responsibility afterwards. I take that as an investment up front. Let me invest in your future. That I will pay for. But don't come and ask me money njalo. Hambe esikolweni, zobhadala isikolo, mawuqeda, you know you're going to help the next person. That person helps the next person. In njalo, then we break those cycles so that you're not always the dependent. Because the day you die, or the day you lose whatever income that you are getting, so many other people, it's a chain of people that get impacted. So it's not black tax, it's helping at home, but it's also empowering, right? So that the people don't depend on you. Ane? Yeah. I don't know if there was another question that was asked, but I think those are the finance questions.
Sanibonani. Khona into nje ngizothi ngiyibuzisise lapha kusisi. Ngoba makaloku ekhuluma lokuthi abasebenza ngathi ukhuluma abasebenza kubhasi kuphela. Ngathi laba abanye abangasebenzi kubhasi abahlala emshinini balo nalaba abashaya ilento bathini whatever into basenza wezandla azisebenzayo. I'm trying to talk off abantu abazisebenza. Ngathi ababalwa bona ngoba ubabalini ungezwe kwami kahle ngiyaxolisa. Bengithi nje nabo ukuthi bafakwe nabo kulo ndawo le. And then okwesibili lapha mangithi umam lawyer ngapha sengiyahlukanisa. Umam lawyer ngapha yena ngisafuna ukwazi ukuthi uma ngifuna ukuthi indlu ngifuna ukuthi ingathengiseki ikhona into enje ngale ukuthi indlu ingathengiseki ukuthi noma sengilele ubuthongo bokufa indlu ikwazi ukuthi itholwe abantwana bami abantwana baloku belandela beyithola njalo ingathengiseki ikhona into enje ngale.
Yeah, but I want to start by commenting first on income, and maybe you might also clarify a bit, right? Usually, when we work at income, we focus on they are already working at home, and you find that maybe you still have siblings, they're not working officially, like they're not working, they're not getting a salary, but they are skilled. Wa kgona gore a tswe a ilo lokisa dilo and make money. But I think mostly parents exclude them from contributing in the household. So you end up maybe le frustrata motho o one because she is the one who is working. And there's 3 or 4 other siblings who goes out, you know, ba bereka ka matsogo a bone, and they keep the money to themselves. And Kobana is like, but I ke berek, so how can I contribute? And I just want you to kind of help in terms of how do you clarify that so parents can make everyone in the household understand what an income is and how do you contribute, because at the end of the day, it benefits the whole family. And then on you then, Mabongi, I just want to understand in terms of the accrual, right? If a husband is married and they have a child, then the wife dies. They have a house together, right? And then the wife dies, and then the husband remarries. I'm talking about liability, especially on the children in terms of them inheriting. Then if the husband remarries and marries someone who already has a child, and they bring the child into the marriage, now there's 2 kids, and they still stay in the same house, right? And then later on, then both of them now have a child together. Now there's 3 kids, one from the deceased, and then the one that came into the new marriage, and the one that they just had a child together. So out of the 3, if the assets are being accrued and it's after, I don't know, 15, 20 years or whatever, yes, those years later, are they all going to get an equal share? Or they're going to get shares depending on when the asset was in the year. If you had your first child and the asset, you mentioned something like if you started now, the asset was 50,000. After 10 years, it's 100,000, right? So out of that 100,000, who's going to get? Are they going to get an equal share, or the child in the first marriage is going to get more? Like, how do you share the money?
Sanibonani. Mhlambe ngiphumile ubuziwe umbuzo wami, but it's fine. If ubuziwe, I'm asking if we are estranged with my husband, and then estranged, and then he goes, wherever he stays, he's making ikoloto. Then I hear it, then I decide to take him divorce so that I cannot be part of the nto le ayenzayo. Angisho akayenzeli mina vele. Uyenzela maybe ama-girlfriend wakhe le. Uthenga imoto ngaphandle. We are estranged. So mangabe ngiyamdivorce in the process and the divorce iyaphela. Ngisazosala nesikoloto nyana sakhe. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for the finance lady. So regarding the repayment for bond owners or homeowners, right? You've mentioned which you can reduce your debt from 20 years to closer to 10 years, right? What is the method that we can use? I know that the lady asked about the formula for the other stuff. I'm asking now regarding property. How can we pay less? Oh, no. I'm sure there's another formula as well.
Dumelang, nna dipotso tsa ka I think di pedi or di tharo. Mara ha di thata. They're easy to answer. Ya pele ke botsa hore how often should the will be reviewed? And then ya bobedi ke hore, is it proper to let your children know about their inheritance in the will? Lunzele phela. ka mantswe a mangwe le seka la ba patela ba tsebe gore go na le eng mona mo willing eo. Is it proper to do that? And then e latelang o buile ka trust, family trust. Family trust, well, how ka wa ata wa yatisa. Family trust, how does it differ from a foundation? And then aka utlwa hape for people who run a business. Let's say this is a business trust. Aka utlwa le bua ka how important is auditing. Auditing.
Thank you.
Amen, Barcelona. That's a lot, ne? Okay. So, qala ku question where ubaba uthi ehene. Ubaba wakhe passed away during the year 2006, right? The other children inherited, but he didn't get any share in it. Number one, when other people inherit and you don't inherit, what we need to first determine is the inheritance bayithole kanjani. Was it through a will or maybe you died interstate? And it's more shone une will sithi you died testate and it's ushilo ukuthi kwenzeke. Mawushona unganale sithi ushone interstate. So if abanye ba-inherita wena u-inherit, ukuthi angisamboni ubaba uphi. Abanye ba-inherita wena u-inherit. Babe-inherita ngani yini eyayisho. Ye-advise yami ungahamba uye master's office if it's here in Joburg. Uye master's office ne-ID number yakababa wakho. Bazokufunela i-file because i-file yakudala, i-file is probably at archive. You can just wait a month or two for them to retrieve the file. They will get the file and then you will know exactly how others inherited and you do not inherit. And if it's possible, ukuthi abanye bayidlile bakuncisha babophe. And then Umama Mdlalane spoke about doing a will biblically, and she also spoke about sharing with your children usaphila and whatnot. Bazalwane, izinto ezakho. The choice is yours. Noma yini ekujabulisayo. Do it. Tina, we can only advise. All lawyers don't decide. Lawyers advise. She's an accountant, right? She can only advise. She cannot go and do a budget for you. She cannot implement even that budget for you. When you know your circumstances, you know your life, you know my priorities are, you know your family as well. Because it's ngafika lana, siyenze i-example yakandlalane, example yethu sonke. Ama-families awafani. And abantu bephila abafani. Because we issue April as well, where she feels if you already have, there's no need for you to want. You don't know want abafani, you understand? We take this approach so that kuzobane fairness and equality, that's all. It helps ukuthi wonke umuntu delay naye the same way. That's it. Sengidlulile kubantu abayi-3 njalo, angithi niyabona? Laphayana ke bese siza ukuthi ke how often should you number 9 how's izindlu not to be sold? How can you keep a home and ensure that the home is not sold forever? Abelungu have been doing it for the longest of time. I spoke about it in my trust angithi nobaba ngiyampendulo okade ebuza ama question about the business trust, family trust, about the foundation as well. Today is just not enough for us to cover all of these things. These things need time because uzophuma uthi lawyer uthe angithi yabona mawufika ekhaya bese wenza iblanda. This is not me advising. This is me going through something that I myself took years to know. Ngisayifunda namanje because there are developments every day angithi yabona. But you will take this as advice and awupatalanga wes cabanga uzothi hayi lo ithe and ungayipatalanga you can't even sue me, you understand? This is just the church asking me Jay, to assist and tell you about something. You can't take this as Bible truth. Consultation takes time. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Izinto engizikhulumayo la zifaka kakhulu abantu baka finance nizwila ngithi emawili ama trust afaka kakhulu abantu baka finance. My advice alone is not enough. Nami ngiyathatha ifone ngifonela uSibanibani ngithi Sibanibani nginento so. How can we calculate? Another professional from another profession angithi yabona they advise me as well. By the time I give you advice, I've been advised by 4 people myself. Nami ngine opinion yami uthi AS5. Then we come to a conclusion that is good for you. So you can't take into sikhulume lana besithi run through angithi yabona siyadlula sisendleleni angithi yabona. You can't take lezi zinto bese uthi hayi kuthiwe ukuze sibe nezindlu singaxabana senze trust seniyavuka nonze trust yadura. You can't just wake up and go into a trust. Fanele nivumelane as a family. Fanele kube nama principles athile that will govern that trust. They must be legal and lawful. It must be registered. Yabhatala tax akusiyo nje into nje. Uyabona? There's a lot that goes into it. So ngi-advise ukuthini? Angithi ngiya-advise ngidecide. Give yourself time. If une internet hamba ofunda, hamba. Legal aid is my favorite place. Bengithi ngizonivezela ama details abi laptop yami icimini. Legal aid is my favorite place. Gogo mkhulu wena onganayo imali yokubhadala ummeli. Sisi ngane wena unganayo imali yokubhadala ummeli. Hambe legal aid. Ama lawyer ase legal aid are one of the best lawyers we have. I know ukuthi abantu abaningi abayithandi because ku criminal law bathi hayi basenza sivuma amacala. Basifaka nejele ngithi yabona. But in misconception, getting to work ka legal aid for an attorney is one of the hardest things ever. Ama exam wakhona, ama questions akhona are so hard for us even as attorneys ngiyabona. Abathathu noma ubani lapha bafuna i-all rounder ujika into eyazi yonke into. Hambe legal aid. Make the time. Make the appointment. It might be tedious mawibuka because it's back and forth. Baksak assessa ukuthi imali unayo or awunayo. Do it. Angithi udinga usizo. Imali awunayo. It's okay. Hambe legal aid. Angisazoya kulo clinic. Bazokusiza ne. I-vets in lo clinic, i-UJ in lo clinic, i-UP in lo clinic, I can't say that word, Suzman Foundation, bayancedana nabo. You understand? These are all free institutions that you can go to, uthole free legal advice and quality legal advice, not just legal advice. Angisithi quality into right. Uyabona? Maxatshwane emakhaya indaba yezindlu. Ungawaste isikhathi gogo. Thatha isikhwama sakho, shona amabhoda. Hamba wenze appointment. Bazokusiza, trust me you. We go to court. I have cases where I am against legal aid and akudlala ku serious. Those people know their story. If file is on young kid, go to legal aid. Trust these people. They are attorneys as well. Abasolanga boni degree encane kuneyethu. And umsebenzi wabo every day bona. But deal with so many cases because so many people can access them. So exposure yabo inkulu kakhulu angithi yabona. Mina a month maybe abantu abawu10 abang-affordayo. Legal aid they get 100 people. So uyabona ukuthi experience yabo ingakanani angithi mina it's all about who can afford me angithi bona it's anyone and everyone can go to them angithi. So take that. And then the last thing I think may I say my questions for mina ne. It's about ngicela sidile ngalento le. Uyabona umshado abantwana inheritance yini. Unfortunately we didn't have time bese sokhuluma nge-maintenance. Yakhumbula sikhulume ngokuthi abobaba sometimes abantwana abafika section wangithi wena sisi Amanda ushadile nomnyeni wakhe uMandla noAmanda bashadile. uMandla uyashona sisi Amanda uselwi1. Abanabo abantwana according to sisi Amanda ngithi abantwana baka Budmandla bayafika. Abantwana baka Budmandla they are entitled to maintenance from this estate. But they are entitled to maintenance. Musani ukuthuka abantwana nibaxosha abantwana nizimabiza amagama. Maintenance is different. It's different from anything. Ngimchazele nge-maintenance ngithi even we will mawubhalile uthi imali yami izodliwa usibanibani nosibanibani. That estate is still liable for maintenance kubantwana abakhona who are financially dependent on the person. If financial dependency is tricky so much, ngifuna ukubela kwi-issue ye-back tax. I know she said she doesn't like the word back tax. But it's tricky to a point. where you were supporting family members and they can prove it ngama bank statements and accounts ukuthi ububa support i-estate yakho mawushonile abantwana fanele beshare nalabantu laba because wena ububa maintain uphila side chicks girlfriends extra from the marriage if they can prove ukuthi wena ububondla nayi payment ubuyifaka every month you will maintain those people yikho kubalekile ukuziphatha kahle bazalwane ziphathe kahle uphila impilo right ungenzi into ezifani ungathi mawusushonile ufaka abantu einkingeni yenza into straight izinto eziqondile please because wonke umuntu uzokwazi ukuclaim leyo yokushona uNthabi asked about ukuthi maseshonile ubani iaccrual isebenza between spouses ayisebenzi between children abangena abantwana ukuthi ama estate akhulile anciphile bazi inheritela abantwana inheritance yabo abahlangani nokuthi what ubani okhulelwe estate yabanye abancane but with situation of a blended family must be fancy correct in terms of blended families what happens is that get dependent sometimes has the spouse adopted the new child if bangaba adoptanga uzothola maintenance still because ungithi u maintain but if you maintain adoptile une right efanayo nabanye abantwana but if akamaintainanga kashintshanga nesibongo ngo akenzwanga ubehle lahle likhona sihleli sodwa sina la ekhaya akatholi kwi-estate yomuntu ngizonichaza kanjani fanele ngikhuluma isingisi ke fanele ukuze sizoyenza sizo understand these two people are married right irregardless of the number of children they have either or if eshona omunye uspouse number 1 ukuthola i50% share in community ngithi bese abantwana bashare lo munye 50 ngithi bona abantwana balapho ekhaya ngokwegazi bona batholayo ngokwegazi nabe adoption lo yawu uzothola maintenance kuphela I think ngisolvile kanjalo yeah so complicated it's something that we'll have to explain later I think ama questions elo aphelile bazalwana ngithi sengahlala phansi ne okay amen
yo hayi angeke siqede ngiyababona abantu basasenembuzo ngicela ukuthi next month we have a stewardship day again